Now, my next special guest is a three-time SAB Television Sports Journalist of the Year award winner and a former ENCA sports journalist, Mr. Junior Steinbach, also a friend of mine, a mate, a guy I love chatting to about content, about sports, about everything. A guy, I would say he gets it, man. We're going to talk to him about what sports he's been following these days, what he's been up to since leaving the mainstream scene, and, you know, that nice little experience he got to go to the Olympics in Brazil, in Rio in 2016. I've only been to one major tournament, that was Wimbledon 2014. And I know I do complain about it, but it was Wimbledon. You know, I just went to Japan, but I wouldn't say I was working in Japan. I was there for a week. It was a nice little fun trip. But this guy was at the Rio Olympics, and it's the biggest sports tournament on the globe. And yeah, he will tell us about that, his career, what's going on in sports, and we'll chop it up and catch up with Mr. Junior Steinbach. Junior, welcome to the Sports Live podcast, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I wish you had led with, when introducing me, I wish you had led with my friend first. That comes first and foremost, right?
Yeah,
a good mate of mine, and then all that other stuff, right, comes afterwards.
Oh man, I didn't know how to rank it properly.
No, what do you think I'm most proud of? I'm most proud to you know, when I see people on the street talking about Sibusiso Mjikeliso and the work he's doing, I can say, yeah,
get out
that
of
guy
here,
introduces me as his mate first.
Get out of here, bro. Get out of here. How you been, man?
As of late, I've been pretty good. Yeah. I'm doing okay.
How did you get into like sports journalism? Was it like was it like a thing that you wanted to do off the bat, or did you fiddle with other forms of journalism at first?
Man.
How did that sports journalism?
No,
because I've got a different story to that, which I'm not sure if I'm gonna share it now. This is all about.
I'd love for you to. Please, we can exchange stories. Mine is one of those typical I fell into it type of situations.
Okay.
I grew up not far from where we are right now. I went to high school. I was in boarding school at the National School of the Arts.
Okay.
Just a couple of blocks from where we are now. I spent high school in that boarding school around Braamfontein all the time, and I was a drama student. I always thought I would grow up to be a screenwriter, producer, director, and actor. That was always my jive, actually. But through doing that, you know, I developed a skill for writing and a skill for and passion for reading. I went when I was 19 to the US to continue my studies in the dramatic arts and theater and film. And when I got to the US, I lived in Queens, in New York, and when I got to the US, I didn't have anybody with me.
Where's your T-Bone Touch accent?
I've got I don't have anybody who tells you that, oh no, you just happened to come back with it is lying. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends with me. I didn't know anybody in New York City. And I started to find that the easiest way to connect with people, to start a conversation, was through sports. I'd meet an Australian guy and be like, hey, you watch the cricket. You know, I'd meet an English guy, I'd say, hey, you watch the rugby. Meet an American, you could speak about the Knicks or about the Giants. And I was, at that stage of my life, I'd say a passive sports fan.
Okay.
I liked a good game, but I wasn't a fanatic.
All right.
I wouldn't cancel plans for most matches.
Not like me.
Not when I was 19. When I was 19. But then you start forming these relationships with people based on that one thing, because that's the only thing that we can talk about. We come from different cultures, from different countries. We find it difficult to relate. But if I say to you, man, those Giants last night, then that's something that we can spark off from.
Man. Who knows where that conversation will go?
And from there, my passion for sport kind of evolved, and I became the fanatic that I was, let's say, in my 20s. I've calmed down a little bit now. You know? You need some balance in life. In my 20s, I had none of that balance. When I got back to South Africa, I started a vlog with a bunch of mates.
Okay.
A vlog called Fool Time, FOOL Time.
Right. Okay.
Because we spent every weekend on my couch in my apartment, talking crap. about sports, and we'd watch everything from the first.
That's pretty much
that's
what
every
I do
right.
Monday,
Every we would spend from the last Friday evening Curry Cup game to the last Sunday evening La Liga game, just on my. That's me and my mates drinking beer, watching games, and talking crap. And then one day my friend Bongani says, we should film all this crap we talk.
You think?
And we started doing that. It became a little bit expensive, but we put out a season of like really fun stuff on YouTube. And it got me my break into the industry. When we started running out of money and we could no longer do it, I packaged them into into my CV, and I put a link to that content in my CV and
put it out there.
Started putting it out. And because that vlog had a lot of other elements to it, right? It had a Facebook page and stuff that I'd write on and whatnot. It was enough to get some attention. So that was my entry into sports journalism.
Pretty long-winded, but nonetheless, man, mine is like totally different. I've done some what feels like jail time doing politics in Durban during the rise of Zuma and the break between the IFP and the NFP.
Yeah. I didn't know that about you.
There. Man, look, I've lived, bro.
It's a hole.
It's a hole, bro. So, what else have I done? Man, I've worked in sales. I used to be a sales associate at home. The homeware store?
Yes.
Like linen.
I only learned that about you last week because I saw what Tando posted a picture
with
of
me
you
wearing an apron, right?
Exactly.
And at home apron, and I've got an earring.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was me. I was that guy. I couldn't get a break in journalism. I could write. I could always write.
Sure.
Right. I could always write, but it's something I discovered too late to sort of have cultivated it in high school.
Okay.
Right. So but I could always do it, like English words, everything. I could just put them together. Languages as well, because we spent some time in Lesotho when I was growing up.
Okay.
Played some cricket. I even played international cricket for Lesotho as well.
Okay.
At under 15.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a little bit of a Zixmda story. There's some correlations there, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Some correlations. Zixmda's an Eastern Cape guy who spent time in Lesotho.
Yeah. So I spent some time in Lesotho, and he's a writer as well, obviously. The most phenomenal, probably writing export we've ever had. I'll put him up there with Bob, Bryce Courtney, and J.M. Kutsia, if he's not greater. So, I did a bit of that, and then eventually I applied to an internship when Tiso Blackster used to be called Avusa. Got in, and I was hungry as a mofo, bro, because I had all those years where I wasn't in the industry, and I was just... I was doing this and that in East London, I really thought I was going to live the East London life, where I'll just get a job, get a Polo Vivo, and live in a flat, bro.
Right.
And
play Sunday
and
rugby
drink
with
every
your
weekend.
boys.
Play touch rugby with the weekends and talk about how I used to be a cricketer. But, getting a break in your own career, man, is so difficult. And I get a lot of young guys hitting me up. On Twitter, where I'm most present, and on LinkedIn, looking for a break, and it's tough, when you've either studied or you got a passion for it, and I feel fortunate and privileged to have done it and gone all the way up to editing Kickoff and being a published author. Still got lots more stuff that I'm gonna do, but I still feel like it's been a privilege. I did the thing I've always wanted to write sports. Like,
sure.
I've fiddled around and messed around with everything else, but I've always wanted to be a sports writer, bro. Yeah. So, could you say the same thing? What's the one thing you said you always wanted to be? Like,
smart.
You got that
over and above everything. I went through phases in my life when I was like a real youngster. I thought I'd be a professional sports person. I realized I wasn't good enough at anything. I was C-team football, C-team tennis. I was just, I was average, if not below average. High school, like I said, I thought I'd be in the dramatic arts. Again, there's some dovetail there with your boy Tando Manana as well, right?
Yeah, he was.
There's a little bit.
He was quite the dramatic
He did
artist.
like the theater. He did like the theater. but through the one consistent I'm not the most competitive person in the world. I don't care too much about being the best. I don't care too much about being the first. I just want to do things with integrity.
You're right.
I just want to do things with properly, you know, and that requires a certain level of intelligence.
We have that in common, like that knack of just wanting to do things right.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people kind of have the kind of application required to, you know, narrow your focus.
It requires patience.
Yeah, it does require. I've actually burnt a lot of friendships and relationships in my pursuit to do content the right way, like good content. And I don't always get it right, but I always feel like if you do certain things, you have to put like great content out there, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's sports, man. It's fun.
It is.
Right? We could be having a beer right now. It's a pity we're recording this on a Monday. But we could be having a beer right now and it would be as fun as it would have been if it was like a serious conversation. You know
but there's a serious element to it as well.
Yeah.
You know, particularly people want to bring that absolutely false perception of there's no politics and sports don't overlap, which is absolute nonsense. Twitter garbage. But you know, there's a serious from, you know, a society like our own, South Africa, you know, Saudi Arabia, where women are literally dying to get into football stadiums. You know, places like Palestine, you know, where Israeli football clubs are playing football on occupied territory. That you know, you can't ignore the seriousness. You know, Kaepernick, right? You can't ignore the seriousness because it doesn't take place. It doesn't take place in a vacuum. Sports, you know, it's fun. You love it, and you love that passion that it stirs up inside you, and those moments that are just like, you know. Then you sober down and you're like, oh yeah, but you know, Castor didn't run the 800 this year, right? And you gotta be sober again too, because that's a person's life.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you read the piece on. Is it it's not My Players. The
Players Tribune. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen the headlines. I bookmarked it. And I'll come back to it. Yeah, I was a bit busy when I saw it.
She talks about how she wanted to be a soldier growing up, and you don't expect that from a girl, right? Growing up, she wanted to be a soldier, like AK-47 kind of, you know. But like it's she bucks so many norms, bro. I'll tell you that for free. And she is so candid in how she speaks. I don't know who she was speaking to, but my word,
whoever they were,
that was,
they got her relaxed.
You're
right. Oh, that's so great. As a journalist, that's amazing, right? You're like, ooh, how did you do this, right? I was like, what? Journalists are very much. Alchemy. You ever seen Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee? I suppose you have, because you're a content freak, right? And that entire series, which is gone a number of seasons now, right? 10, 11 seasons. Some of them on one distributor, some of them on Netflix. The entire series about comedians geeking out over each other, right? Ooh, I like how you do this, and you know, you do this, and I love how, right? And it's just, I don't know if I can use this word, but I'm going to go for it. It's a circle jerk of comedians, right? But sports journalists do the same thing. We do the same thing, and any community that is kind of like, you know, that appreciative of each other and to a degree self-involved, to a degree, you know, I appreciate that about, you know, I loved hearing, I saw something on YouTube several months ago, an event where Timbaland and Pharrell were two guests on a panel. And it was just like one of them going, oh, dude, you're amazing. And the other one going, no, dude, you're amazing. Oh, the other one going, oh, dude, you're amazing. And I've got to stop myself, like week in and week out. I see Sibusiso Mjikeliso on air. I got to stop myself from texting her every week, just going, you're amazing.
Same here.
You're amazing. You know, Julia Stewart, the same thing. I just want to text her week and just, you're amazing. And I did. Kate, when your book came out, I was just like, this guy, because that's what we do, right? And if I haven't said it enough, the way you structured Tando's story, the next time I saw Tando after having read your book, I'd never felt I'd never felt like his friend before. He's a very nice and warm guy.
Yeah.
He greets me very warmly every time. And it's amazing. And he's an amazing person. But after having read your book, the next time I saw him was at Craven Week. Maybe just like 2 days after having finished the book. The Craven Week that was held here in Joburg at St. Stadions, right? That year that the Sharks had just a team that made people part like the Red Sea.
Yeah.
And I hugged him. And it was only after having hugged him that I was like, why did I just hug him? We're not tight like that. And then I realized it's because I felt so much closer to him after having read your book. And I was like, is that a false sense of closeness or is it legitimate? I spent the whole day trying to unpack how I now felt about Tyler.
I think that's the biggest compliment I got on the book, because that's what I was trying to do, was make it as relatable as possible. You know how you follow content and series, like I follow like LeBron James so closely that I feel like I know him.
Right.
You know,
right,
I feel like if we were to walk in here, I would be like, yo, those new LeBrons.
You could start the conversation right off the bat.
I'll know exactly what he's talking about right now and stuff like that. That's what I tried to do with Tando as well.
Job done.
So whoever met him would be like, yo man,
job done.
Your dad, or yo man, your daughter, or yo man, great quiz, whatever man, you know?
Yeah.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it. Speaking of job done, right? You keep avoiding this. I'm trying to put you on a nice little pedestal here. You multiple award-winning sports journalist, by the way.
Yeah.
How did you take that all in? Scooping SABs. There was a run where it seems like they were just.
I did have a run.
It was getting ridiculous.
I did have a run.
You had to stop.
My uncle actually said to me, "Don't enter next year after I won the third."
For real.
He said, "I'm going to delegitimize the competition."
Yeah, maybe it was starting to look silly, bro.
And it's like, fair point. But that next year was the year I resigned, and I didn't end up entering anyway. So what was your question? How did I how did I contextualize it? Kind of. You know, man, in my head, I came into this industry not knowing what I was doing.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm decent at writing. I've got a good on-air presence, you know, and due to my history in drama, I can handle a microphone, I can handle a camera. So I was like, okay, I can do this, but I didn't have a plan, you know. It's only after maybe 12, 18, 24 months of having been in the industry formally that I kind of carved out a niche for myself and figured out what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that was in two areas in particular, but it got narrowed down to one, and that was in African sports, sports, you know, taking place all around the continent, because I felt it was underrepresented, and we don't have enough access to each other's sports. And the second was in women's sports,
right?
And I felt my accessibility to women's sports, particularly in South Africa, I had a greater level of accessibility.
Right.
You know, I could reach out to the women's proteas, I could reach out to Banyana, whereas if you're trying to do something on Joshua Cheptegei, I've got to go, how am I going to get to Uganda? If I've got to do something on Kipchoge, how am I going to get to Kenya, right? It's difficult in that regard. So once I carved out a niche of women's sport for myself, I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to try to make an impact here. I'm going to try to, because there are difficulties that existed when I came in. There are difficulties that exist now in how we distribute women's sports content, how we speak about women's sports, how we engage with the content, how we engage with the product, how we engage with the athletes.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna forge a new path of representing and covering women's sports with integrity.
Yeah.
You know, again, comes back to what we said earlier, right? I just want to do things well.
Yeah.
So when I was winning things in sports journalism, my thought was, this will get me to a higher platform. This will get me to a higher plateau, right? So I accept an award and I drive home thinking that night, I'm going to use this award, this validation, I'm going to use it to step into my editor's office tomorrow morning and say, okay, I'm winning stuff for the organization. You've got to get me to the Women's World Cup so I can win more stuff on a broader scale. Or, you know, yes,
Obviously,
I've done,
the
right?
next challenge.
It's
Obviously,
the
you
next
wanna
challenge. You want to
move
grow
to the
like
next
that.
level. Yeah,
and so
yeah.
that's how I contextualized awards in my head.
But what was the reality?
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I mean, your mom would be like,
My mom cares. You know, fellow journalists and colleagues care. From editorial, here's the thing with editorial, and you'll know this better than anybody else. There's a concept about editorial independence, right?
Yeah.
That exists all over the world. That journalists and organizations, media of all kind, try to uphold, and obviously with good reason that I don't need to get into right now. But editorial independence without sales know-how and strategy, and without the buy-in of the private sector, advertisers, sponsors, whatever the case may be, it's crippled.
Yeah.
You know, it's entirely crippled. And the thing about that sales part of the conversation is that those need to be some dynamic people, man.
Yeah.
You know, people selling advertising, people selling, and I'm not trying to criticize anybody. It's a difficult job.
It is.
It's a really difficult job,
It's the toughest job
and it moves
in the
and
industry.
dips as the economy moves and dips.
Yeah.
But it almost kind of, it almost it precedes, right? The dip in advertising and in private sector engagement almost precedes a dip in the economy because everyone's thinking a quarter ahead, right? And a quarter after the economy has recovered, people are still hesitant. So it's a difficult
and it's
thing
worse when you're
to
dealing
manage.
with digital. So digital is like this moving target, and no one's got a
Moving
fixed
target, well said.
sort of idea of what they're doing. We're all kind of like
Well said.
pretty much
Well
faking
said.
it, right?
But it requires risks.
It does. It does.
It requires risks. Some of them, and I'm so jealous when I look at quote unquote developed countries and the risks that they manage to take because maybe their economies aren't growing spectacular well, but they're
I think
steady.
because the economy is stable,
Stable,
so they can. There's
right.
a little bit of a buffer.
Yeah, and that's
Before
exactly
you
what
fall
it is.
Some sort of cushion.
That's exactly what
You'll
it
have
is.
some sort of credit.
100%.
You know, we are.
100%.
I don't want to get deep into the economics of things, but in South Africa, if you fall hard.
Yeah, you fall hard.
The
Yeah.
economy isn't there to catch you.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well
that's
said.
Just